So first we have our St. Bede's Children's Choir, led by Aaron Renninger.
Prepare
youth minister here, and she's going to be speaking about waiting joyfully.
Thank you. Oh, this is on. Awesome. All right, so as Nicole said, my name is Ginny, and I am one of the youth ministers here at St. Bede. And I am frequently asked all the time if I am married, and I am not. And I'm going to share a little bit about that discernment process with you tonight. So, growing up, I loved to make plans for my life. And recently I came across a Christmas letter that my mom wrote years ago. She would write Christmas letters just updating friends and family about the goings-on in our family during the year. And so when I was 5 years old, this is what she had to say about me. This year was filled with 3 family weddings. Ginny became fully versed in wedding festivities, announcing that she was going to marry 3 cousins. Andrew, Timmy, and Mikey would be the grooms, and her older cousin Robert would be the father of the bride. After missing Aunt Julie's wedding in favor of playing with cousin Andrew's toys, she saw the video and announced she was going to fly back to Texas, and Aunt Julie and Uncle Paul would do it all over again. Although she wanted nothing to do with Aunt Mary's rehearsal, once the bride was dressed, Ginny was enthralled, trailing Aunt Mary everywhere with the train in hand and walking down the aisle as Flower Girl with the biggest grin on her face. By Aunt Virginia's wedding in October, she wanted to know when she got to walk down the aisle. Look out, future husband-to-be. So, for as long as I can remember growing up, I always imagined that I would be married. So, when I was in college and in a serious relationship, it just seemed like this plan would be fulfilled. And so towards the end of college, this man and I began to discern our engagement and marriage. And through that discernment process, it became very evident that that was not meant for either of us. So we parted ways. And in the midst of that breakup, I was really distraught and devastated, and especially bitter as I saw a lot of my other friends go on to be married and start families of their own. And I remember taking this bitterness to prayer, and I was praying the rosary, and as I was praying the rosary, I really began to reflect on the story of the visitation, which I would like to read with you now. So the visitation comes from Luke's Gospel. In those days, Mary set out and went with haste to a Judean town in the hill country, where she entered the house of Zechariah and greeted Elizabeth. When Elizabeth heard Mary's greeting, the child in her womb leaped, and Elizabeth was filled with the Holy Spirit and exclaimed with a loud cry, "Blessed are you among women, and blessed is the fruit of your womb. And why has this happened to me, that the mother of my Lord comes to me? For as soon as I heard the sound of your greeting, the child in my womb leaped for joy. And blessed is she who believed that there would be a fulfillment of what was spoken to her by the Lord." And in this moment of my own bitterness, as I reflected on this mystery, I was really drawn to Elizabeth. Because here was Elizabeth, who waited and waited and waited for a child. And through all of her waiting, she remained faithful to the Lord. And finally, in her old age, she conceived a child. And as she is pregnant, here comes her little cousin Mary, who is not even married and pregnant. And not just pregnant with any child, but pregnant with the Son of God, with the Messiah. And reflecting on this scene, I came to realize that if I were in Elizabeth's shoes, I would be really frustrated and really bitter. But that was not Elizabeth's response. Her response was one of joy. "Blessed are you among women, and blessed is the fruit of your womb." And it is at Elizabeth's joy that gives Mary the freedom to express her own joy in the Magnificat. So in this moment in prayer, I realized that the Lord was inviting me to be a little bit more like Elizabeth, to be faithful in my waiting, and to be filled with joy. So, not too long after this, I actually had the opportunity to visit a friend of mine who had entered a religious community. And she really challenged me to be open to the possibility of discerning a religious vocation, which was something I had never really been open to before. So I began to visit sisters and spend time with religious communities. And in spending time with sisters, I was just always struck both at their peace and their trust that the Lord really would provide for them. I remember I was with some sisters and we were preparing meals and like there were apples missing, and so sister just said, "Oh, we'll pray for them." And I said, "Oh, are you like seriously? Like we're packing these right now." And somebody came and donated apples like by the end of the day for these meals. It was unbelievable how they just trusted the Lord with the most mundane things, and He still provided. And it was that really the sisters, it was the example of the sisters' trust in the Lord that really inspired and encouraged me to trust the Lord with my own life. So after a period of really about 14 months, in a very particular moment, the Lord revealed to me in a moment of prayer His desire for my life, a desire that was also my own desire, and that is a desire to be married. And in that call, there was a lot of peace and a lot of freedom. But in the midst of that call, there was also a call to wait, because He still had to work on my heart. So what He did then and still continues to do now, He has given me the gift of time. The gift of time to be with my family and to reconcile relationships with family members. Time to be able to visit my friends and celebrate with them as they start families of their own. Time to heal and time to pursue the interests and hobbies that I thought I would get to sometime later in life, but He has given me the opportunity now to pursue them. But most of all, He has given me the gift of time to fall more in love with Him and to just learn a little bit more of His great and abundant love for me. Now, even though I'm so thankful for this gift of time, there are so many moments when I am unsettled and restless with not quite yet being in my permanent vocation. And whenever I bring this restlessness to prayer, He reminds me of Elizabeth and reminds me that she was faithful to Him and the Lord was faithful to her. And just as the Lord was faithful to Elizabeth, He is faithful to me. And in that faithfulness and in the knowledge of that faithfulness, there is just so much hope. Hope not just for my future vocation, but hope for a life spent in eternity with Christ. And from that hope comes so much joy. Thank you.
Next we have Justin, Meredith, and Caroline Forbes singing Restless by Switchfoot.
Looking for I'll be waiting, I'll be waiting, I'll be waiting. I am waiting, you are waiting, we are waiting, we're all waiting. I am waiting, anticipating all that I aim for and what I was made for. With every heartbeat and all of my blood beats running inside me, I'm looking for you, I'm looking for you, I'm looking for you, I'm looking for you, I'm looking for you. I am restless, I am restless, I am restless, looking for you. I am restless, I run like the ocean to find your shore. I'm looking for you, yeah, I'm looking for you, yeah, 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 I am restless, I am restless, I am restless, looking for you. I am restless, I run like the ocean to find your shore. I'm looking for you, I'm looking for you, yeah, I'm waiting for you, yeah, yeah.
Next up, we have Rita Hipple sharing a story of waiting for healing, and Rita is our Children's Faith Formation Coordinator.
And Rita is not as talented as Jenny or the Forbes family, so bear with me as I read off my notes. So, when Nicole came and asked us, some staff members, to share our own personal stories of waiting, of course, as a mom, my mind immediately goes to my children, whom it seems like I am always waiting for in some form or another. But in particular, my mind goes directly to my youngest child, Kelly. The most intentful waiting I've ever done in my ministry of motherhood or of my life stems from 2 emergency room trips with Kelly, the first in November of 2011 and the second in January of 2012. To make a long story short, the end result of both of these trips, testing and lots of waiting, was a pediatric oncologist at VCU telling my husband and I that Kelly had a mass in her abdomen. Because Kelly was only 7 and her abdomen was so small, the only way to get an accurate answer as to what the mass could possibly be was that Kelly needed emergency surgery. The doctor continued to talk about numerous things that mass could possibly be, both very easily treatable and also potentially life-threatening. And then there it was, the word that none of us in the room wanted to hear, especially as a parent: it could be cancer. I don't really remember much else that the doctor continued to say because I pretty much went numb. I was utterly and completely overwhelmed with the feeling that I had never felt before. As I look back onto it now, I know that it was the Holy Spirit trying to protect and comfort me so I did not fall apart right there in the emergency room. So that very long day turned into a very long night, which turned into another very, very long day for Kelly of pain management and testing. As I watched my daughter, all of those unwanted questions began to flood my brain. Why God? Why Kelly? Why our family? What did I do? Or what could I have done that you might be punishing Kelly for? Here's where God told me to wait. He didn't answer my questions. He didn't give me a sign. He simply gave me silence and asked me to wait. The next morning, we woke at 6 a.m. with 11 white lab coats that encompassed most of Kelly's room, that made up 3 teams of doctors that would take over Kelly's surgery. They said they had a plan. Right then and there again, I felt God's hand at work. Although I was still very overwhelmed, I again sensed a sort of peace. After they wheeled Kelly off, my family stood in prayer in the hallway. It was our gut reaction. We didn't know what else to do. After a long 3 hours waiting for her surgery to finish, the doctors came to us with the news. Again, not the news that we wanted. It was cancer. It was a 2-pound tumor in Kelly's abdomen in my 7-year-old daughter. It encompassed her left ovary. The questions started to come over us. What? What did you just say? Why? I don't understand. The doctor said that what happened to Kelly they had never seen before in someone as young as her. And the only explanation was that Kelly could have been struck by lightning, was pretty much the only answer they gave us. Again, as a parent, a little overwhelming. From there, Kelly's journey of healing from surgery began, and we waited again. We waited for the pathology reports to return, which would take several months. The doctors left. The doctors felt in Kelly's best interest that we needed to continue with some sort of treatment or action, because if we waited for the pathology reports to return and come back, the cancer could have spread. They asked us again to be patient, because they needed to consult with Mayo Clinic, St. Jude's, and others across the country to proceed with what the best protocol would be, because they had never seen this type of form of cancer in a pediatric patient. Within 2 weeks, we had a plan from the doctors. Kelly and I would leave for a week at a time from home and stay at VCU for all of her chemotherapy treatments. These were very, very long weeks away. They were weeks of waiting and watching to see how Kelly would react to the chemotherapy. Waiting and watching and trying to figure out how to explain to Kelly what was happening to her as her hair fell out. Waiting and watching how our other 3 young children would get through each day without Mom and Kelly being at home. Waiting to see how my husband will learn how to juggle being a mom and a dad. Waiting to see if Kelly would proceed on schedule every time we showed up for a treatment. If her blood cell count was okay for her to start. During this long journey, my family became immensely close, with many other families going through very similar journeys with their own children. People who the day before that had been complete strangers to myself and my family, we were now immensely close with, all waiting together in daily prayer and support groups for the news about one of our children. My family waited and walked through treatments, sickness, relapses, and even death, unfortunately, with some of these families. At several points along Kelly's journey, I felt very thankful and yet guilty. Why did it seem that Kelly would survive and others would not? And so here we are today, along 5 years later, and thankfully, Kelly is what you would now say cancer-free. We continue to still wait for healing. We wait for healing from the side effects that somehow manage to get more intense for Kelly the further we get away from treatment. We continue to wait for healing for all the others who we have walked on this journey with, to continue to pray for healing for their children. So in closing, I ask that all of you be very patient and pray for those who are waiting for healing. Everyone knows someone who's waited for healing, a family member, a friend, a child, a loved one. You can never judge a book by their cover, Someone's always waiting for healing, and someone can always use your prayers. Thank you.
Next, we have Abby Adamson and Marie W. doing Breath of Heaven by Amy Grant.
I have traveled many moonless nights, cold and weary, with a babe inside, and I wonder what I've done. Holy Father, you have come and chosen me now to light in my darkness, more of me, your holiness, for you are holy. Breath of heaven, breath of heaven, breath of heaven, breath of heaven.
Next, we have Sarabel Rodriguez, who does all kinds of stuff with the Spanish community. I don't know what your title is. And she's speaking about waiting for God's plan.
Hi, I'm nervous. I'm always nervous when I need to talk like that. I hope that you can understand my English. I work the Hispanic minister. Now I have been working with the children, religion education. I have been working with the natural planning method for the couple, adult faith formation, and youth group. And why waiting for God's plan? I know God has a plan for me. Something happened in March 12, 1988. I'm going to tell you how old I was. Don't count. Don't make it mad. How old I am now. I was 15 years old, 1988. That was a Saturday. Like every Saturday, I had a meeting with my science club. But that day was special because we have a field trip. We needed to go to different farms. They are going to talk about pesticide, and we're going to take sample of the water and the soil. I was so excited. Scientist. I want to be a scientist. That was a good day to play like that. That day is supposed, this is my town. This is my parents' house. I was living here. It's supposed that the van picked me up here in the street at 10 in the morning. My mom was really busy. We are 4, and the older one, I was 15. The other one has 11, the another 9, and the other one 5. She was really busy doing laundry, cleaning, and with the kids. And I said to my mom, don't worry, I can walk. And I walked from here to there. When I came, I was late. I lost the van with the rest of the group. I went to my uncle's store. He has like a mini supermarket. And I asked him, did you see the van? He said, yes, but they left. Okay. I went back home to say to my mom, Mom, can you drop me off in the farm? Because the farm was like 15 minutes away. But when I was walking, I thought, oh, here lives one of the teachers that is supposed to be in the farm. I stopped there and I asked his wife if he can give me a ride. He wasn't there, but she told me he's coming back pretty soon. And go home, go to your home, and he's going to pick you up later, and you can go to the farm. He did that. He took me to the farm. We was all the day doing the sample, talking about the effects of the pesticides in the soil, in the water. Wonderful. At the end of the day, like 3 o'clock, it's time to go home. He asked me, the teacher, asked me, you want a ride to go home? And I said, no. I want to go with the rest of the students in the van. I want to have fun. I waste the morning. I want to have fun now. And I did. The van stopped here. He stopped in this side. I crossed the street. I went back to the van, I was waving at everyone, happy, see you Monday, have a nice day. I didn't look both ways. One of the car was coming really high speed, over the speed limit. He hit me. When he hit me, I flew up to the windshield. I don't remember anything, thanks to God. I just remember I was waving. After that, I don't remember anything. I went to the windshield because he was really fast. He didn't stop slowly. He just stopped suddenly. When he stopped, I flew up again to the ground, to the street. I hit my head many times. I don't know who took me to the hospital, but they didn't wait for the ambulance. They didn't call the ambulance. Someone took me to the hospital. Meantime, my uncle went to say to my mom that I had an accident and I was in the hospital. My mom went to the hospital. She asked, what is a small town? Was a hospital with no technology, anything. She asked the doctor, please send her to the good hospital. The doctor said to my mom, I'm not going to do that. She's going to die pretty soon. She is not going to be able to, she's going to die in the way, because it's like almost 3 hours to get to the big hospital. I'm not going to use that ambulance for that. At that moment, when the doctor said that, my aunt, I call her Titi Lily, she came to the hospital. Why my aunt is important? Because she's a pharmacist. She knows about hospital, and her husband has a brain tumor years before, and she knows a good doctor. My aunt lived 45 minutes away from my home. She didn't know I was in the hospital. She didn't know I had an accident. But she said, I was feeling that I need to see you, that I need to see Saribel. I need to see her. She was doing what every mom was doing Saturday, cleaning, laundry, and she stopped everything and she went to see me. Before go to my home, before I come here, she stopped here in my grandparents' house. When she stopped there, my grandparents said she has an accident, she's in the hospital. She went to the hospital. She called the doctor, her husband doctor. And the doctor quickly made an order, sent her to the big hospital, quickly. If she didn't feel that she needs to see me, I would not be here. I know what to do. She's my angel. Okay, I went to the hospital. In the hospital, they found out that I couldn't wake up because I was in coma because I have a blood clot pushing my brain. That's why I couldn't wake up. They decided to make a surgery, but the doctor said to my mom, maybe she's not going to survive. The probability is really small. And if she does, she's not going to be able to talk, to learn, to walk, anything good for me. They did the surgery. After the surgery, when I woke up, my mom said that I was a baby. She couldn't understand what I said. She gave me an apple to eat, and I ate an apple like an animal. Like that, and she started crying, how I was looking. And 4 days after the surgery, I went home. Still like a baby, but I was okay to be at home. When I was at home, I have another angel, the student Jeanette Morales for the high school. She talked to my parents and she said, I will be here every day to read to her, to teach math, and to teach science. That is what she loved. Until her brain came back. And she did. And she said, I will be here 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever it takes to me. She went to my home only 1 week. 1 week after, I said to my parents, I want to go back to the school. I went back to the school. I was learning like nothing happened. 2 weeks after, I was dancing in the school dance. They say, I'm not going to survive, and I did. And was all the prayed. The church, I was in the station of the church all that week. My friends at the school all was praying, all the families. But I know Jesus has a plan with me, not for me. Because I was a good girl. Well, I'm a good girl. Why I didn't go to the heaven? Why he didn't want me over there? He has a plan with me. And every day I ask him, I'm doing what do you want? I'm really, because I'm still here. I guess he has something more. But what it is, and I guess everyone has, Jesus has a plan for all of us here. The student that went to my home, Jeanette, she went many times to South America to help the poor people. When the last time she was there, one of the ladies died in the labor. She has a baby with a Down syndrome. And Jeanette said, how she's going to survive here? No water, no medicines. And she adopted that baby. I guess I was her first miracle, because she was the one that made me go back to the school. And she haven't done a lot of miracles in her life. I know God has a plan for everyone. I have a plan with me, not for me, with me.
Next, we have Eric W. singing My Soul in Stillness Waits.
Surely my hope is in you.
Nicole mentioned. So it was the year 2010, and I had just graduated from college from George Mason University up in Fairfax, Virginia. And I was getting a little neurotic and anxious about my future plans, my post-college plans. I had no idea what I was doing, but the one thing I did know that I wanted to do was go into some form of ministry after college. And so I actually ended up in youth ministry. And so I landed a year-long internship with the Youth Apostles Institute up in Northern Virginia. If you haven't heard of the Youth Apostles Institute, it's what's called a mixed association of the faithful. So they have lay consecrated, they do have lay consecrated, but they have married members, lay consecrated, and consecrated priests as well, with the common apostolate of working in youth ministry. So I was working with them, and they assigned me to work in two different places. I was working at a parish out in Manassas, Virginia, and a college in Arlington, Virginia, Marymount University. But as I said, I was a little anxious about, my life, my future, etc., and just what the heck I was doing, in this environment with these people that I never met in my life, because I was living in a community house of 13 or 14 other guys. Some of them were priests, some of them were lay consecrated, some of them just single guys trying to figure out life. And I remember one day I met one of my housemates, and it was someone that he approached me, and it was a 6'5", burly guy, loud booming voice, a belly laugh like crazy, and wearing a tie-dyed shirt and some blue gym shorts and some flip-flops. And that was my friend Tom Dusterhouse, and that pretty much describes him in a nutshell. Tom was one of the guys that I lived with in the house, and he was actually a lifetime lay consecrated member of the Youth Apostles Institute. So like a lay religious brother in a community, he took the vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. But he wasn't a priest. He was, like I said, functioning as a lay brother, and he was working as an English teacher at Bishop O'Connell High School in Arlington, Virginia. And so I had a lot of respect for Tom and his life choice and his life commitment, and just the way that he lived his life. And there was something about Tom that just struck me, where him and I just hit it off instantly. He was, as I said, he was kind of, as you can imagine by my description, he kind of had a bit of a quirky sense of humor. And a lot of things, a lot of the references that he would make was some reference to pop culture that usually him and I understood, but no one else around us really got. We kind of just laughed to ourselves, and everyone would just kind of look at us weird, like, all right, whatever, Tom and Ben are just kind of doing their thing. And we do that back and forth sometimes, and it was a lot of fun. One of the things that he always liked to do was imitate those, those monster truck rally guys on TV, the Sunday, live at the Hampton Coliseum. Gravedigger, barefoot. We love to just imitate that guy for some reason, just the monster truck people. It was just, we thought it was hilarious. And, so we got a lot of joy out of the simple things and the simple pleasures of life. And this was the thing that really struck me about Tom, was that as I was, still young and still trying to figure out my life, Tom was 37-year-old, English teacher, lifetime consecrated member of this community, and he just had a lot of joy in his life. He didn't have a whole lot, because he had taken a vow of poverty, and he lived a very simple life. I think in his room he had one mattress that he slept on, and they just placed on the floor. He had a little wooden stool, and his acoustic guitar, which I would hear him sometimes down the hall playing, and just belting it out sometimes late at night. And what really struck me about Tom, or why I think we developed such a friendship, was that Tom gave me a lot of hope for the future, actually. And why do I say that? Because Tom was just, even in his state of life, even in his age and his experience, Tom was just himself. Tom was just a character. And at this point in the game, I felt like, it's time to grow up and move on a little bit, and you gotta mature. Mature is all true. You got to put on the big boy pants and really figure out life and work at this. And those are all true things, but I think what Tom inspired me about was the fact that even in that process of figuring out your life, growing up, and trying to figure out what you're supposed to do, you can still remain who you are. You can still retain your personality, your quirky sense of humor, your interests, your hobbies, all these things that really make you, you can still retain even as you progress through life. And that was a real big inspiration for me. It really resonated with me that I didn't have to become someone I wasn't as I grew up and aged and tried to figure out my life. I could still be Ben Flusser with my weird, quirky sense of humor, skateboarding, playing guitar, whatever it might be. I could retain those things to a degree, and that gave me a great sense of peace, a great sense of hope. And then in the summer of 2011, I'd gotten back from Richmond from a trip, and I came back to the Youth Apostles' house, and Father Jack, the director of the Youth Apostles, came up to me and he said, "Ben, Tom has disappeared, and we hadn't heard from him. We've been calling his phone. We have no idea what happened. It's been about 3 days now. We don't know what's going on." And it just floored me. It was just it was incredible. It was the fact that we'd had this that we'd been persistently searching for him for the last couple days, and no one had heard from him. He wasn't picking up his phone. Family members hadn't heard anything. We didn't know what was going on, and so there was a great sense of just restlessness and anxiety throughout the community. We knew that he had been, for a reason I don't know, he had been let go from his job as a teacher at Bishop O'Connell High School. But beyond that, we had no idea where his whereabouts were or why he was let go. And all of a sudden there was this big stir in the community to find Tom Dusterhouse. And what I remember most about those moments, I think, when he disappeared, was just the great absence that we all felt in the community, because we all loved Tom. We knew Tom was a character. We knew Tom would talk your ear off. We knew Tom would shut down the dance floor at weddings, which he was so apt to do. And we loved that about him. He had such a life and a joy and a spirit in the house. And when he was gone, you could feel that absence. And it was painful. It was hard. And I had actually, before he had disappeared, when I was receiving my candidacy for the Youth Apostles Institute, I'd asked Tom to be my sponsor. And he said, "Ben, I'd be honored to do that." And so that really meant a lot to me that he would take that on and kind of guide me in this process. So when he was gone, like I said, his absence was definitely felt. And it was a very difficult time for all of us. I can't imagine what his family was going through at that time, just not knowing. And that was the worst part about it, was just that we didn't know. And all we wanted to know was something. Was he alive? Was he dead? Was he safe? Just anything, something. And we just didn't know. We just didn't hear anything from him. To this day, Tom's whereabouts are still unknown. We have no idea. I still have no idea what happened to Tom. I don't know. I ask the community when I go back to visit sometimes, if there's any updates on Tom, and they say no. They never heard anything. So the process of this great waiting for some piece of information, for some hope or sense that our friend is safe, is a very difficult process. And I think the hardest thing about this particular waiting is that I don't think I will know this side of heaven what happened to Tom that day, what happened to our friend. It was a very difficult thing, but as always, we kept him in our prayers, and we kept hoping that, that wherever he was, there was some peace that he may have found with himself, whatever that might be. And I remember too the students that he had, the students and former students that he had taught at Bishop O'Connell. They all kind of flooded social media and sent messages on his Facebook page, just telling Tom, or sending him messages about how much that Tom had inspired them, about how much Tom had given them hope as well. And I think when someone like that is missing, you really do get a sense of the impact, one has on so many lives and so many different people's lives. And that's really what I felt about Tom, is as much as he'd impacted my life, he'd impacted so many other people's lives as well. And so I remember one day, we had retrieved his car, and I was just kind of walking down the driveway, and I passed his car, and I just kind of peered in just to look for some clue or evidence as to, or some sign maybe as to, or a trace of Tom in his vehicle. I remember seeing a scrap piece of paper with a quote written on it, and it was from the French Jesuit priest Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, and I can't say that name, sorry. And it's this really great quote, and he had written down, "The future belongs to those who give the next generation reason for hope." And I really was struck by this because I felt that this quote summed up and embodied Tom in a nutshell. That he had given us so much hope. He had brought so much joy to our lives.